Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Life Lessons with Keith Waterfield, Audio Edition. I'm Leland Beckman. In this episode, Keith and guest co-host Paula Flalo sit down with acclaimed comedian Andy Kindler at this year's Just for Laughs Festival on the theme of bad audiences. The next episode of Life Lessons with Keith Waterfield, the live show, is coming up on August 30th at Theatre St. Catherine in Montreal. Keith and I will talk to David McGimsey, Sarah Steinberg, Nora Franklin, and Mike Carrozza. They'll be telling depressing stories on the theme of school and academia, and I'm sure we'll be able to learn a few life lessons along the way. Well, until then, here's your host, Keith Waterfield. Yeah, he's got those life lessons. He's got those life lessons. He's got those life lessons. Keith Waterfield, life lessons. He's got those life lessons. He's got those life
So, sitting with Andy Kindler for Life Lessons, special guest host Paula Flalo.
This is a weird concept. You and I, I'm usually the main host when
You're usually the main host when I'm on the show.
That's fine. That's good. I'm going to be the secondary character. I'm good with this.
A lot of friction right off the bat.
It's all based on our size comparison.
That's right. I'm very tiny in comparison to Keith Waterfield. It's very uncomfortable.
So, Keith, that used to be called String Bean.
I've been called, rake thin? And
what did you call?
Rake thin or rail thin?
Oh, I thought it was like
rape thin.
Rake. No,
there was an A with a K.
Okay.
Anyway, this is off to a good start. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about
Gaunt. You'll be called later on in life.
Yeah, when I'm yelled.
What's up with that guy with the no weight?
Somebody was the anyway. It doesn't matter. We're gonna talk about bad audiences. Is a thing that I've been obsessed with, and comedians. I've seen a lot of comedians turn on an audience. I've seen a lot of audience turn on a comedian, and then myself and plenty of other people walk off stage and just go, "What was that? That was the worst. There's no energy. It's dead out there." And I don't know. Have you had that? Have you had this thing where?
I have had it, and the thing, some things are cultural. Like when I went to London, I didn't play this club. I think it actually called the Comedy Store, but I noticed that there were people heckling. And like in London, not in all of England or whatever, but there's this type of thing where they're listening to you and you better be funny. I think that's a ridiculous way to watch comedy.
Yeah.
Because the only way you can enjoy comedy is if you try to let it go in, and if you want to reject it, you can. But this call and response thing is. I just don't like it. So I didn't like that scene. I don't like when heckling. I worked with a comic once. They did all crowd work. And then after I followed them, the audience expected me to work stuff off of them. So when I first started, I was very, and this is true about my act in general, even now, was I would put myself down first. So when I first started, I was very bad. If someone heckled me, I would say, "I think you're right, sir. Perhaps I should get out of the business." And then it evolved with how I'm putting my act in quotes. It evolved. So like in the I've been doing this 28 years. So in the mid-90s, when the comedy clubs started to get worse in the U.S., they had the comedy boom, and then it was homogenized, and that imploded. Then I would get very angry at the audience. It's always been going back and forth. My whole time I've done comedy is yelling at the audience and putting myself down. And because I've like self-deprecation is like where I normally go to. Mm-hmm. But in general, I think a lot of comics I know I'm guilty of this because I've seen other comics similar to me in the audience where I'm always over-exaggerating how the audience is reacting. They could be enjoying themselves, but because I don't hear it enough. And then sometimes I'm right. Sometimes because the worst thing to me is indifference. If people become apathetic, so then I'm right. But I tend to be someone who wants the audience to give me more, which I think is ridiculous. And but more recently, I have about 5 or 6 times just screamed at someone in particular,
Okay.
or somebody. I am not confrontational physically. I don't want to get punched, so I don't ever like leave the stage or confront people. But sometimes you get so exasperated. But more recently, like last week, I was at a club and a guy said something like, I want to kill myself. But it was a joke, and he goes, "Why don't you?" And then I say, "Excuse me," because a lot of times someone could be like having a heart attack in the audience, and I'll interpret it as them hating me. So I always say, "What did you say?" And then at some point later, he said, "Be funnier."
Ooh.
And then they kicked him out. But I think what's that?
Had they not kicked him out, how do you think that would have gone? What would you have done?
No, well, they couldn't go further. And this is a great club. This is Acme Comedy Club in Minneapolis. They're great. They run the room amazingly. But it's one of these things where I used to get really mad, and I try not to. First of all, I'm not as mad anymore when people do stuff. And I try to diffuse it by just saying, what are you saying? Because I don't like to go to standard put-downs, but I will do put-downs my way. And then, so I've gotten much better at it.
Okay. And when you got angry, like is it because of the audience's response, or were you mad at yourself? Were you mad at them?
Well, this is, again, going along with, even now, I mean, now is, like, the Montreal Festival used to be all one, like, not all one kind of comic, but it was all, like, kind of mostly mainstream comics, and they had the, like, I never saw them, but they had, like, puppetry of the penis, and just these weird acts, and so the crowds, not just here, some of the crowds were great here, some of the crowds were weird here, but in the 80s and 90s, it got bad because the comedy clubs never advertised for the specific comic, so people never knew what they were seeing. And then I would get mad because they just like terrible comedy, and they're not going to open themselves up. But now, I mean, I've made this argument a million times, but now just that they can click on whoever's there, even if the club's not doing amazing marketing, you kind of like ferret out the people who don't know why they came to that particular show.
That's such a bizarre thing that happens when you get people showing up for everybody expects to see like a Dane Cook or like a Seinfeld type of comedian, and then they show up and it's an alternative show, and they're like, well, this isn't. I don't understand why this is funny. I don't understand why I'm here, and that's a moment where I'm like, well, I think it's on the audience to know who they're seeing, and also it's not really a comedian's. I mean, I guess it could be a comedian's job to like make you laugh, but it's also like everybody has different tastes of comedy, so you can't make.
I think there was I remember. This is one thing I know about this festival, Just for Laughs. They have the cheap tickets every once in a while, right? Mm-hmm. So people just nab whatever they can get a hold of. So they end up at a show where that wasn't their main intention, and then they go see that show, and then it ends up being something they just couldn't find funny because they just weren't aware of it. So I think that's how they can fall into it, or like a friend drags them out. But I just think like the alternative comedy show, I lose my shit every single time I see that show. And
we have a lot of return people come every year. The thing about it is this too. It's like. I've been very lucky to have done Letterman many times, and I do like field pieces for him. But like when I would go to New York, and I would work out my set, like the last time I did it, so we have a lot of we're letting all the warts show here, all the ambient noise that you get at a festival, like someone moving a cart of food. You're getting it now. But when I would go to New York, because I'm from New York originally, but I live in Los Angeles, and I would go and I would sometimes bomb at these clubs the night before working out my stuff but ultimately I feel that's, I could never have done an act that wasn't me anyway. Mm-hmm. So I always feel like some people get mad. Oh, you shouldn't be playing to the back of the room. And I'm playing to people who understand comedy. That's what I'm doing. Yeah. And a lot of my stuff, like, I've done this joke for years, this, that, and a third thing that would be even funnier, Like I used to do a joke about cotton swabs, because there was reading the back of the package and it said other uses for cotton swabs, and you can clean out small crevices. So I would do all these different examples of other uses. One of them was, hey, if you want to measure something, but you don't like things to be specific, use a cotton swab. It's like, what are the dimensions of that shelf? 18 cotton swabs wide, 15 cotton swabs deep, and a funnier number high. So, you could say I don't think it's, I mean, if like even like Letterman, who's in so many ways the man for me. He's my hero, and so like I patterned not copied him, but he'll often start out the show joking about something that happened before the show with somebody in the audience. The audience laughs. It gets them kind of in the mood. It's like I don't mind inside stuff, but I don't base my whole act on like flogging references that I know they don't know. It's sometimes harder here in Canada because things that are so familiar, like I don't know, like when I was slamming Adam Carolla the other night, I didn't know if it was because they didn't like what I was saying or they were not as familiar with him.
It could be that he's like I think he was Just for Laughs last year or the.
Oh, I'm not sure when he was here last.
idea.
I think he was here last year.
He was here last year.
He did a podcast.
I didn't see his show. I didn't see the podcast. I didn't see his show. I did see the other Adam. Adam Richards is who I saw at Mainline Theater, who I like a lot. But it was. But in terms of, if it's familiarity would be one thing. But do you ever get people in an audience who are just like they laugh at a joke, but they're not actually laughing at the joke? They're just laughing because they think they should be laughing.
I think I do, but I think the other thing is that sometimes if you don't get the reference, but you get where I'm going with the humor.
Yeah.
I don't get a lot of courtesy laughs like you're talking about. Yeah. I'll give my, but a perfect example was when I was in and it also depends on where you are. I was in Melbourne, Australia. It was almost like coming home to my roots because they really enjoy self-deprecation. So any throwaway line that would be self-deprecating, they were howling at because they see themselves as a country that way, and they don't they would never like Dane Cook. They don't like bravado. But I noticed, like I said, that Chelsea Handler just signed a $30 million deal where she has agreed to not come up with any more horrible ideas. Nobody knew it. They literally had no idea who she was, and that also made me happy.
Was the Carolla, when you were slamming Carolla the other night, was that based on his recent comments about?
Well, what happened with Carolla, I'm just going to slam him Friday. I just started to get into this thing where it's reached a fever pitch where people think that if they say anything, like especially comics who say terrible things, like someone like Bill Maher, who I've gone after many times, he thinks that because he says terrible things that are really not sometimes jokes. Well, he's doing jokes. Adam Carolla's not even doing jokes. That anybody who complains about it is clamping down on free speech.
Right.
So to me, it's like I found these clips of Adam Carolla saying that Mexicans are flooding the American schools and they don't have our same values and they don't believe in hard work. And he goes 6 minutes. It's not a joke there. I used to couldn't stand him. And I couldn't stand the Man Show. But I had to admit that every once in a while there was something kind of funny about him, And I tried to I saw him at an airport once and I did his podcast. But then the second time I did his podcast, it's like he ignores you for an hour. And it's like not so much. It is him. He's, I think, horrible what he's saying because what people like him are communicating is the right-wing agenda. So because they're claiming it's comedy, you can't criticize it, but it goes right down the line of Zimmerman. It's like, what are we making this big deal about race in this country with the Zimmerman thing? It's like, no, this guy was profiled, and when people are now they tried to portray like Trayvon Martin as wearing gold teeth. It's like if you had a guy, anything the white person would do that would be a tattoo or whatever, you wouldn't immediately, I'm scared of this guy. So he's feeding into people's inherent racism and prejudice, and then so I've blocked 1 million people who have just said terrible. They just come on and say terrible, and it's not him. He hasn't responded to anything I've said. He probably won't because what does he care about me? But these other people, there's like a vague, intimidating thing to it. That's the thing. And to me, it's just like speaking up against anybody. I'm not calling him Hitler, Carolla, but I notice I just put him in that sentence. But it's like anytime there's ever been like someone said, why don't you get over it? And so last night I said Martin Luther King was on Twitter. The people would say, would you stop it already with the whining about civil rights? Lighten it up. So it's like that's what they always do to try and stop terrible movements.
That's such a funny thing too when it's the Twitter format because they can choose not to read it. They can choose not to follow. Like the idea. It's like they feel like you're attacking them with your thoughts. It's like, don't pay attention.
Yes, and here's the thing. And then they work. Those same people try to use that philosophy. To me, it's like, well, if you don't like. First of all, the thing I hate most on Twitter is when people tell you what to tweet. I'm not a trained puppet. I'm not someone's clown. If you want to see me in a club, I'm not going to be going off on. In fact, I used to say nothing about. I'll make fun of comics, but I say almost nothing about politics in the club. But don't tell me what I can talk about on Twitter. My Twitter feed is whatever I want to do. Like I love Colin Quinn because he always says these things that people take seriously, and but he's joking around and people get enraged by it. So to me, it's like don't tell me what to tweet about. Just don't read it or stop following me if you don't like it. You go, you're going on this rant today. Why don't you get back to the jokes? But the other thing they say is like, if you don't like Adam Carolla, just don't listen to him. But I don't believe that. I believe if someone's saying things that are obviously bigoted, obviously prejudiced, that I have the right to talk back to that, because someone tried to argue that with me. Like some people will hop on Twitter. Like if we're friends and we're all sitting around and we're joking with each other, and you were in the room, nobody from a total stranger would come up and just go, "Yeah, you're an idiot. Where'd you get that shirt from?" Because you don't know them, but because they're strangers. But on Twitter, people see you joking around with comedians. They think they can hop in, and it's not about being a comic or being elitist. It's just like, I don't know you, so when you're telling me I'm a jerk or whatever, I don't get the comedy about that. So they want to be able to say things to you, but they want you to just be able to not. Take it. So to a certain degree, I do believe if you don't like something, don't listen to it. But when something reaches a mass of hideousness, I think you have to. I have to speak out about it, and I'm not doing it to be hero. I'm compelled to do it.
No, and it's hard not to. And there's so much debate happening right now with race, with sexism, with so much in the States. There's so many articles that's happening. It's hard not to contribute, hard not to comment. But but then it seems weird when people try to stifle that. When they try to, it's like I just imagine someone tweeting at you, "I like your earlier, funnier tweets."
Yeah, it's like the Woody Allen thing.
Yeah,
it's because, if you notice, like people like Bill Maher or whoever, I always go to Bill Maher, but people who are like so obsessed with, if you don't like it, don't listen to it. They're saying terrible. Like Bill Maher will often go, "Well, Twitter's not for where you say real things; it's for where you say anything." No, you're a terrible tweeter, Bill Maher, and you do say terrible things. So you want people just to say, Bill Maher is being Bill Maher. It's like there are no rules. Like I made fun of Mindy Kaling one year because she said that it was like Variety had a how comedians should use Twitter column, and she was saying like, "Well, I do it like just like things. Twitter should be for things overheard at a coffee shop, So I did a whole thing like, "Are you going to have the omelet?" So it's like, yeah, okay, Mindy, you can do your little droll thing. I'm not that angry at her, but I can't stand that show.
Oh, true.
Mindy, the Mindy Project?
Yeah.
You enjoy it?
I haven't paid attention to it.
This is how I always lead into, I don't like it.
Are you her friend? Oh. Yeah, I don't know. Have you gotten into a Twitter argument that you had to stop yourself from?
Well, there's two things. Like I was telling someone earlier, when I grew up in a thing like in a Jewish family where you would say, you look at the TV and you go, "Why doesn't that guy shoot himself in the head?" So I'm very careful on Twitter not to engage in anything that can be construed as violence, or I don't get into it with people. If I get angry and I see, like some people are crazy. There is one in every 500 people who is some kind of a pathological something. So what I do is I'll banter. Like I had a guy who was an Adam Carolla fan, and I was just going back and forth with. I loved it because he was just saying ridiculous things, and then I would come back. But sometimes, like now, I heard Tom Green talk about this, and I thought it was really wise what he was saying. Because he goes, I was in the world of pranking and stuff like that. If I see that where they're coming from and it's bad, I just block them. So I'll just block people now because I don't have the time also to go back and forth with them when I know that they're not really wanting to talk about it. They just want to tell me that, like, people portray Adam Carolla like, oh, he's just got a different political view. No, bigotry is not a different political view.
Yeah.
So I do block quickly now, but I've apologized to people if I've taken things the wrong way, which I can do. And that's the other thing. Remember, like some people were saying comics should never apologize. Like I forgot who was saying that. Like when all the stuff happened about, I forgot there was like Kramer did his thing,
and Tosh.
And Tosh, you should never apologize. I believe that a person should. I would apologize if I said something terrible on stage, because I think when you're on stage, you are sometimes unfiltered or not unfiltered. So that way you want to be able to give yourself permission. But sometimes you'll make a mistake. I've been lucky enough. I've never said anything on stage that was
Well, it's just like in life, Sometimes
Yes.
sometimes you say things that you have to apologize for, or do things that you have to apologize for.
I agree.
But, Patton Oswalt had that article recently, a blog posting where he apologized for an opinion that he had about the Tosh thing. That was a really
that was really cool. The thing that I thought was really the thing that was amazing was the other day, a few days ago, Salon. Did you read that thing? No. Okay, so you know that the San Francisco station that after the Asiana thing, there was it was like a crash, but only 3 people, not only 3 people died. Well, somebody fed these fake names of the pilots and then this San Francisco station just didn't even catch it, and it was just all like hung so low or whatever the thing was.
Oh my gosh!
So Patton Oswalt tweeted that same station just hired a new PR person, We So Solly, and then Salon was like, "Oh, this atmosphere, and how could you say that?" But it was obvious they had no idea that this guy is whatever you think about with like the thing with Tosh, everybody knows that Patton Oswalt is hilarious and he's not gratuitous.
Yeah.
That joke is a perfect joke. It's not a joke just based because he's saying "We so sorry." And they also did it later, a similar thing on Colbert and The Daily Show. But the Salon people are just kept digging deeper and deeper. They say, "Oh yeah, we went back on your Twitter feed and we saw what was funny in 1993." No, you're idiots. You don't understand that this guy is. This was a perfect joke, and you don't get comedy, or you're politically. That is the thing about it. There is political correctness for the wrong reasons. But my whole thing is, if you're funny, it trumps everything. Like you could see David Tell within 10 minutes or 30 seconds. He he uses words that other people would use, and they would be offensive. But he's so hilarious that you don't care what he's saying in a way. So it's like it's either funny or it's not funny. And I guess I went off topic.
No, that's good. That's why conversation instead of interview.
That's right.
One thing, if we were to go back on topic about audience, what do you think about people who cross their arms and sit in the front row?
You know what's interesting is that I've noticed that I do the same thing. It's like you're uncomfortable, and like I just do this. So I try. Like I used to say things that like, "Oh, why don't you join hands with the person behind you and do the Andy Kindler rejection then." I don't get it, and I don't want to. Don't see do. But I have noticed that a lot of people. I mean, you could tell sometimes from someone's face.
Yeah.
Like the guy the other week who at the club who said "be funnier" and all that stuff. His I think girlfriend or wife, she stayed for the rest of the show, just glowering at me, like just like. What are you torturing me and yourself for? Just go.
It must be hard to ignore that too. You're standing up there and
all
you can see.
Yeah. Anything in my eye line like that, I don't like that.
No.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No.
I'm a bad person.
But you can apologize. That's okay.
I apologize for my actions.
I don't know what compels someone to go to the front of a room and cross their arms, and it's like they're clearly not prepared to have a good time. And then if somebody does say "be funnier," are they really going to, like, if you then appeal to their sense of humor, are they actually going to find enjoyment out of it?
Because that person has no sense of humor. Don't you think that's it? They have no...
Yeah.
None whatsoever. They just don't find anything funny?
No, they don't find what I'm doing funny. They'll never laugh at what I'm doing. So
then why do you think they would keep on coming back? Or why would they stick around? Are they in that hopes of, like, I'm going to find something funny if I stay here?
I think
or
they
just want to be miserable for the entire time.
I think they just actually lack social skills, or they don't understand what a comedy club is, and they literally at that moment don't understand why they can't say they don't like something. So it's just bad parenting or no parenting or bad social skills.
Just picturing a whole bunch of people like sitting through like terrible TV reality programming that they don't like, or documentaries, being like, "I don't get this. I don't understand this. I don't like it. I'm going to watch it and just yell at the TV." Like it was almost like that. Like, you have the power to change the channel. You have the power to get up and leave.
Right.
But why stay? And
I think at this point they were like, we paid our cover charge, and so we get to do this.
Still on the 2-drink minimum.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But it's like also drinking. If you're drinking, I think everything changes. If you're drinking a couple of drinks, then it's great. But if you're drinking 4 or 5 drinks, I know that a lot of people I'm friends with just get weird. And I have to admit that when I first went to comedy clubs or whenever, or even as a comic, I don't yell out, but sometimes I do want to yell out. So I understand the impulse to not when you're not liking something, but I also believe that you should be have some kind of whatever
Tact.
it is, tact.
Yeah.
I was going to say civilized, but that word is so badly used.
There was something that happened last night at the alternative comedy show that I was at, and so were you, of course. The front row, I think, on both sides of the audience was completely empty.
It wasn't completely empty. It was like 2 seats here and 2 seats there. Yeah. Well, the other thing is that it's first of all, people don't like to sit down front.
No.
But I thought like I had the lineup. I thought that would be just, every show would be. This is the first year we're doing 5 nights.
Yes.
We did 4 nights last year, but we used to only do 2 nights. And I'm going up against a lot of midnight shows.
Yeah.
I think it'll be more packed as the week goes on, but I did notice that. But I always get my hopes up for everything. I go, how could this not be sold out? Or it's anytime you get your hopes up or you think something is going to happen, forget it. It's not going to happen.
What I find is funny is that there is that a lot of people do not like sitting in the front row because they don't want to get picked on by the comics. And then and their sort of recourse to this is like, I'm going to sit in the second row. But then if everyone thinks that way, that entire front row is empty, and then all of a sudden you're in the second row, which has now become the first row.
Yes.
And then they get picked on regardless. And
Right.
they get really irritated by it, which I really enjoy.
Yeah. But the other thing is,
You're sitting in the back, just
I'm sitting in
being
the
like,
back. was
I
sitting
love
in the
that.
fourth row. I'm just sitting here and I'm enjoying it. I don't mind getting picked on, but I like watching the comics do other things to other people and get,
Sure.
like I know my wife, for example, is shy. My wife's like, there's no way she's sitting in the front row. And well, first of all, she doesn't want to be watching me from the front row because that looks weird. But also, I think it's from the time period. There used to be a comic who, like, she was an insult comic or whatever. So she would arrange who's going to be in the front row. You got the blonde, you got this thing, you got that, and so it's like contrived. And I think the history of comedy is that people will, like, if it's Rickles or it's Mike Sweeney or it's Richard when Richard Belzer used to host, then it's cool because it'll be funny. But then I think there is a history of people getting picked on, not even in a horrible way, but just in an uncomfortable way. So I definitely understand that. And I like to sit in the front row, but like a lot of times I like to watch comics, but I don't want them to be nervous that I'm in the front row.
The one thing I do enjoy watching is because you're the host and you curate the show at the Alternative Comedy Show, and I do see you're usually off in the corner hanging out with the other comics, but you're still paying attention to what's happening on stage, and you'll pop in and out every once in a while just to sort of keep an eye on, or just like sort of just respond if they ever react to you.
Well, the in a lot of ways the greatest setup I thought at the time was the cabaret, because I would just stand in the wings the whole show, because I don't really host shows except for here. So I really feel it's my obligation. Plus, I'm booking people I love. I want to hear what's going on. I mean, like not to name drop, but to name drop. Like Zach Galifianakis one year, he would go to different parts of the crowd and like I do a joke and he'd go thumbs down and things like that. So, and Todd Glass is like that too. Yeah. And like Rory Scovel last night ran up on stage during Todd Glass's act and did. Well, first of all, Rory Scovel is unbelievable.
Yeah,
I'm just in awe. And then Todd Glass I've known forever, and he's just because Greg Fitzsimmons, who's going to be on the show later, was talking to Todd Glass about how he does 3 things. He's doing the joke, and he's doing like what if he was something else, and then he's dealing with the reaction to the joke. But Roy Scovel jumped up and was pretending to be a comedy roadie or something, so he'd be like uncool, like
I know.
And then Todd was like, I don't really need that. Yeah. So, but this room now I feel so much better at, because I'm keeping a couple seats, like a seat right at the bar there. Because upstairs is like a little area where you can get snacks, but I feel much cut off from the show. And last night I was a little bit annoyed, but I don't even know what it was. I heard talking going on up there, but it's like I think people think, like if there's industry people, sometimes they want to talk, but they need to be in and it wasn't even industry. I don't know what it was, but it was like not knowing the show would start or not knowing what they were saying was coming from the top thing to me. But I like staying. All I do is stay downstairs now.
Do you get easily irritated at shows? Is that a thing that happens? I don't.
I don't. You know what's so weird? It's like I have such strong opinions that people think when they meet me I'm going to be mean, but I feel like I'm like
I don't know. You don't come off as mean.
Socially nice, and I always feel like even those shows, Like last night, I felt kind of silly in a way because I'm still working on this material and about Adam Carolla. So I was basically like, it was a lot of that stuff's terrible. It was like not comedy. So
Okay.
that's the deal there.
I thought I heard someone walk by.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, this Emily is just unbelievable. She's not even with the festival. She just goes around. She goes around the hotel and she tells people to wrap it up. It's unbelievable. And she's been doing it for a week. This is the second year she's fooling everybody.
Do you get tired with your fingers spinning around?
She told me. You know what she told me? She said, "Look, your comedy is good as far as it goes, but it's really annoying." And she listens to an iPod when I'm. No, she's the nice.
She's the one that was talking at last night's show.
Yeah, she talks at the show. She's so nice. I wonder what her angle is. That's a joke that nobody gets. I say all the time, I go, people here are so nice. I go, what are you thinking? But, I'm not always funny or ever.
I guess we have to wrap it up. Well, there always
That is not a show business official cue. You want this? She's a mime. By the way, if you're staying at the hotel, every morning I call the front desk and I say, can you turn the street performing down, please? A bit? Because outside the hotel, there's banging. I thought the first guy was tuning his drum. No, he's banging it. That's what his bit is every day.
So you should go down and hang out with them.
Yes, that's what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Go heckle them. Okay, well, great.
Thank you so much.
That's the end of this portion of Life Lessons with Andy Kindler and guest co-host Paula Flalo.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I love
thanks.
all of you. Both of you and all the people in the world.
We all love you too.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Paulo Flalo for stepping in. You can check out his podcast, Edge of the City, at nomoreradio.com. And don't forget, August 30th, 9:30 p.m. at Theatre St. Catherine in Montreal. Life Lessons with Keith Waterfield, the live show. I'll be back in the co-host seat, backed up by my band, Oral Turpitude, who you're listening to now. And Keith and I and the band and our guests will be drowning our sorrows in whiskey for your entertainment. And stick around after the show for a live performance by Ottawa punk band The Tenenbaums. We'll see you there, everybody. He's got those life lessons. He's got those life lessons. Keith Waterfield, life lessons. Ooh, Keith Waterfield.